You must promise to stay here forever.
You have my word.
Done!
Tell me about Stockholm Syndrome. Do people in Stockholm like this name?
Probably not. I could actually ask my daughter, who is visiting there now. So Stockholm Syndrome was coined as a psychological response that can occur when someone is held captive or in an abusive situation. Okay. It involves the victim developing positive feelings or even empathy towards their captor or abuser, and can manifest as positive feelings towards the abuser, sympathy for the abuser or captor's cause, negative feelings towards authorities. The existence of Stockholm Syndrome is actually really controversial, and there's been little actual scientific research to establish that it's a real syndrome. It might be very rare. A 1999 FBI report showed that as few as 5% of kidnapping victims showed signs of identifying with their kidnappers. It's more in the cultural consciousness than it is in the actual scientific psychological community.
What can some takeaways be about what we think of as Stockholm Syndrome?
What we think of as Stockholm Syndrome, and again, I think it probably does exist, but it may be very rare, is when people begin to have empathy and identify with their captor's cause.
Okay.
The most prominent example in real life is Patty Hearst and the SLA, or Symbionese Liberation Army. They captured her, they kidnapped her.
It was just a gun in my face, and I was pushed down to the kitchen floor. I was tied up and gagged and blindfolded, and I bit down on the gag because I just assumed that they were going to burglarize the apartment.
And then she ended up, and this is all publicly reported, she ended up committing crimes on their behalf.
After she was sort of free of them.
Free of them, that's really the key word, right? When are you really free? At what point have you become, and I'm going to use another term that has no scientific validity, but we hear it all the time, when do you become brainwashed? And only understand that your life is linked, because of fear, your life is linked to your captor. You start to believe you cannot survive without your captor.
Okay, so layman's terms, did Belle suffer from Stockholm Syndrome in Beauty and the Beast?
Yes. It's highly problematic to say that that's true love.
Because she chooses to leave. Like she presents it to the Beast that like her dad is unwell, and the Beast lets her go. Goes back to town, and doesn't say that she loves him. She just says he's not as bad as you think.
But he's different now, Papa. He's changed somehow.
That is what a victim of domestic violence says.
Okay.
To defend their abuser over and over
Great.
and over again.
Okay, so is it fair to say that anybody who is a victim of domestic violence, who goes through those motions of he's not as bad as you think, is in some way suffering from the layman's definition of Stockholm Syndrome?
I think you could say that, sure.
Wow. Okay. So it's not just about being kidnapped. It's, are you in a relationship that is abusive and you're looking past the abuse and feeling love? Is the abuse part of what makes you love them in Stockholm Syndrome?
Yes, it absolutely is. It's not that the abuse itself or the being captive itself feels loving. It's that the fear about what's going to happen to me if I'm away from this person who, because of their position as the captor or the abuser, is their sun and their moon and everything, because that's the control they have over them. What happens if this person goes away? Oh my God, I'm going to cease to exist. I'm going to be threatened. The key thing here is that hostage situations are so much rarer than domestic abuse and violence situations.
What's a better term than Stockholm Syndrome? Because I feel like what you just described happens pretty frequently versus Stockholm Syndrome, which is the kidnapping that is much more infrequent.
Yeah, it's psychological manipulation of abuse. It's abuse.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
It's ongoing abuse.
Yeah, fair. It's just abuse is one of those words that has so many different, not uses, but it has so many different applications.
Sure.
You know, the word abuse has so many different applications. So like,
Sure, and Stockholm syndrome is sexy. It's alliterative.
I mean, it's not that sexy, Josh. I don't know that I would say Stockholm syndrome is sexy.
For Americans, Stockholm is exotic. I mean, it comes about in a kidnapping situation. I mean, it is. That's why it's gotten play.
Yeah.
And it simplifies a very complex psychological issue down to 2 words that people think they understand, which is what you want, right?
100%. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the other, some of the other aspects of the film. Is there anything you want to say about Gaston?